large, mature organisations have fairly comprehensive cyber and fraud prevention plans in place to protect themselves.
But how can small regional firms protect themselves without access to the same big resources, budgets or deep skills?
Well, to help us suggest some answers, we're joined in the studio by Francisco Hartmann, who is Head of Division at the European Central Bank, the ECB, Andrew Pade, who's Chief Information Security Officer at the Reserve Bank of Australia, and Rob Sloan, who's the Cybersecurity Research Director for the Wall Street Journal. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. And Andrew, I'd like to start first with you. Would you say that smaller organisations are at risk of being targeted by cyber criminals, or are larger organisations the more likeable target because they've got more cash?
Well, generally what you'll find is that the cyber criminals will be attempting to get into any organisation, and they'll take the opportunity at any organisation. What you'll find is that some of the complexities around larger organisations give cyber criminals an opportunity to a larger surface area for them to get in, whereas smaller organisations often lack some of the deeper knowledge in the cybersecurity space to better secure their environment. So there's some of the challenges that both have, but they're facing the same kind of attacks.
Let's dive into some of the vulnerabilities of the smaller organisations relative to the larger organisations. What do you think some of the vulnerability points are?
Well, what you've seen in the last few years is quite a change in cybersecurity. Security initially started as a single team, often managing out of a mainframe environment, has grown into sort of 5 or 6 different domains of security where there's deep knowledge. You've got pen testing, and then you've got security policies, and you've got security architecture. So it's quite deep knowledge that have been developed in larger organisations, whereas your smaller organisation might have only a handful of people and sort of lack that depth across those domains of security, and really rely on external vendors or support to provide that information to backfill. So there you have some challenges where those smaller organisations haven't fully integrated some of those more deeper knowledge or deeper areas in security and applied them to their organisation. There's some gaps there.
And Rob, what would you say are the challenges that smaller organisations face when it comes to developing their cybersecurity?
So I think I'd highlight a few things. I think the first thing any small organisation, regardless of industry, needs to do is get the support of their senior leadership team and their board, explain to them in plain English, in business risk terms, what cybersecurity is, what it means to their business. Without their buy-in, really your cybersecurity strategy is not going to work. Once you have their support, you look at the resources you have access to work out what you're going to be able to do, and then prioritise the things that need doing. And there really is no one-size-fits-all approach to how you go about developing your cybersecurity strategy. It really is a question of what you've got to work with, the resources you've got, the budget you've got, and how bad things already are for you.
But Rob, counterintuitively, are there any advantages that smaller businesses have that larger businesses don't?
So I think smaller organisations typically have a lot of disadvantages. When we think they typically have fewer skilled personnel on staff, they have less access to third-party consultancy expertise, smaller budgets, the technology solutions don't always scale down for them. One significant advantage they do have is that they don't have all of the legacy infrastructure, the mainframes, the servers, the data centers that some of the larger organizations are dealing with. That allows them to be more flexible, more nimble, to exploit the cloud, and really reduce the amount of IT they have to own and operate, concentrate on their core mission.
Okay, so let's take that point and develop it a little bit further, Francisco, because yes, there are disadvantages, but at the same time, as Rob pointed out, at least some of the smaller organisations are not saddled with legacy issues. So how should they go about approaching their cybersecurity? Is there a specific framework or methodology that they can use just to set the ball rolling?
I don't like to distinguish between small and large organizations, because at the end is the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is having both. So in this context, I think that what is important is that all organizations are prepared for cybersecurity, to address cybersecurity. What is for me, when you were asking me about a framework, I can tell you the experience we have in Europe. We developed something, for example, we call Cyber EU, which is about organizing penetration testing. So it's a framework that is harmonized in Europe, which is good because I think that at the end makes all organizations at the same level of security. And we believe that is very important for Europe. But when we are talking about cyber, we are talking about an interconnected world, not only in Europe, also Australia, US, Asia. So I think that this kind of frameworks should be applicable also to the whole community, to the whole financial infrastructure.
Absolutely. And Andrew, can you give us some concrete examples of initiatives that long-tail organisations have taken to get on top of their cybersecurity?
Mm-hmm. The smaller firms have really been quick to move into the cloud. They realise they don't have the cybersecurity expertise in-house, and they know that if they move into a cloud, the cloud provider has already met particular security standards, and it's already built in. And so they'll just have to move into that environment. And because they don't have the complexities, and as Rob was saying, some of the legacy equipment, they can move to the cloud quickly and take that benefit. So they've been really doing that very quickly. And what you'll find is that the larger organisations are a bit slower to move into that space purely because of the complexity.
Yep.
And Francisco, why is it important to have this coordination and cooperation in the ecosystem of financial services and beyond? We've been talking about the importance as such, but really give it a sense of context. Just why?
Yeah. The context is very important. Again, we are talking about interconnected institutions. So when you have interconnected institutions, at the end, again, the weakest link is making the ecosystem not secure enough. So at the end, we have to address all institutions. And in this sense, cooperation and coordination is very important. It's very important that all organizations, small and large, are cooperating, are coordinating, are sharing experiences, and this is very important. Again, and I want to talk about the European example. The European Central Bank established what we call the European Cyber Resilience Board. What is this? What is this kind of board? It's a board of high-level representatives of the banking sector, of the market infrastructure sector, of the authorities, where they share information about cyber-related events. So at the end, all of us learn from the experiences from others. So again, I think that what is important is that security should not be seen as a competitive issue, it should be a collaboration issue.
Francisco, as a regulator, what do you see your role as being in ensuring that businesses, as you say, small and large, are taking cybersecurity seriously?
Create awareness. You have to create awareness to the financial industry. When I mentioned before the European Cyber Resilience Board, you create awareness about the board at board level of the different institutions about the importance of cybersecurity. And then also you have to create, based on this exchange of views, you have to create a framework by which you test your systems. You are sure that you have a safe infrastructure. And in this respect also, I mentioned before the Cyber EU experience in Europe is a good framework to make sure that the infrastructures are safe enough. Also very important that you have an harmonized framework, and in this respect is very important for global banks. Yesterday in the panel, where we were in the panel, a representative of JP Morgan was saying how important it is to have an harmonized framework for conducting this kind of activities.
Okay, and Rob, I guess the challenge as well for many organisations is really focusing on the right things to prevent, detect and recover. I mean, how can they be sure? Because there are so many different threats coming from cyber attacks, and it's often scattergun. It could be one part of an organisation that seems attractive as opposed to somewhere else. So, how can they determine what is the right point of focus?
It's quite difficult. Protection, prevention, detection and response, it's like having 3 children. You can't choose between them. You need to give them equal love and make sure that they're nurtured and taken care of. You have to be doing all things at all times, of course. The prevention, protection part is critical. That's going to mean that the majority of lower level threats don't get through. But you also have to accept that some of the higher level threats will get through. You're going to have to get them identified and responded to as soon as possible, because that's really going to limit the amount of damage that an attacker is able to do.
Rob, I hope I'm not asking you about your favourite child, but if you were to give small businesses one piece of advice about how they can get on top of this sort of stuff, what would that be?
Just one?
Just one.
Just
You've
one.
got to pick one.
Okay. So there is a window of vulnerability that all organizations have, and it begins when a software vendor issues a security patch, and the window closes when the organization installs it and protects all of their endpoints. That window of vulnerability is the window of opportunities for an attacker to get in.
Right.
So if you have really robust security patching processes, you're going to reduce the likelihood that an attacker is able to exploit you on something where there is a protection there for you to install. You shouldn't need to get affected by this threat. So robust patching processes.
Okay, good piece of advice on which to end. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Sibos TV. Thank you.
Thank you.